Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of Wired Unplugged with me, Jake
You got it
Kulkowski.
right, Jake. You got it right.
I
this
got it
week.
right. Oh, and my valiant and always correct co-host, Aaron Cooper. Good to see you, Aaron.
It's good to be here, Jake.
What I like about me and you is that we don't bother each other that much. So when we talk often, it's on this podcast. So when I say it's good to see you, it's not like I'm sick of you because I've been speaking to you all week. I do a podcast with my friends as well, and we talk all the time. So it always feels like when I say it's good to see you, it's not. I've been talking to you every day. But with you, I do. I'm like, it's Aaron time. I have designated Aaron time, and I like it.
I feel the same. This is some slight relief. Like people won't know this because we don't record right from the start. But every single week when we come into this recording session, we're like, "How are you?"
Yeah.
Don't ask.
Yeah. It's a little bit of sanctuary, isn't
Mutual
it?
ground. It's nice. It's relief. It's like, right, this is therapy time. This is Jake and Aaron therapy.
This is exactly it. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We hope that it can become part of your relaxation ritual as well. We're doing these every single week, and you can check us out everywhere. If you're listening on iTunes, you can check us out on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube and you want to take us in the car with you, but you want to be very safe and keep your eyes on the road, we're on your favorite podcasting. So just check us out, and if you like us, just it means the world to us that you sort of follow us, click subscribe, or leave a nice review if you're on one of these podcasty things. We're working hard every week to get you guests, but we made the executive decision last week that me and Aaron will just talk to you about the news on a week that we can't get guests, save you having to wait. So we're trying to be a constant in your life, and we hope that you can repay that by sending us all your love and thoughts and things like that to our email address, which is unplugged, like Wired Unplugged, at Wired, like Wired Unplugged, Productions, like wiredproductions.com. So that's unplugged at wiredproductions.com. And you can help shape the podcast if you've got any topics and everything like that. We can fold that in to our recurring segments.
And Gloria Gaynor, if you are listening, please do feel free to get in touch.
I don't know, I know that there's some issues with spam and stuff lately. So if your management have been in touch, I just want to let you know that we haven't quite got it yet. So it's never too late to change your life. Coming up this week, we've got the Deetman brothers, who are siblings who crafted this brilliant, grounded sci-fi game a few years back called Deliver Us to the Moon, Deliver Us the Moon. I always say to the moon because I always think of Bring Me the Horizon.
Big. Oh, I thought it was you going for a big fan of RuPaul route.
I am a big fan of RuPaul, to be completely honest. But I actually
he wasn't.
Well, yeah. People without taste, probably, but I met
sashay away.
Very good. I met the Deepman brothers for the very first time, and the one thing about meeting strangers for the first time in an interview environment is that I get to ask questions that for them probably seems very, very simple. Who are you and what you do? Your brothers, how's that helped you develop a game, or has it been a challenge? But I actually really like this, and it's one of the finer interviews that we've done. So that's coming up in just a bit. But first, it's time for segment Uno. Wired Propaganda. Let's go.
Wired Propaganda.
Great. Well, that's Wired Propaganda's jingle. Thank you very much to Mikey Goodman, who we've now outed as the guy who does them. So it's not a mystery anymore. So thank you, Mikey. Wired Propaganda is the segment every week where Aaron, I can't remember what I call you. It changes every time, but our minister of Wired Propaganda, you provide us some Wired-focused news. And we've got some news this week as per. So what's on the slate, Aaron?
First on slate, it's not new news, but it's just very exciting news, and we're probably going to mention this every episode from now until this actually happens. But we have been given the thumbs up to have our own PAX panel, which is absolutely amazing. It's going to be April 22nd at 4:30 p.m.
Yeah, that's
in
Friday.
The Arachnid. Mm-hmm. Yes, Friday, April the 22nd at 4:30 p.m. in the Arachnid Theatre, and you will get to see us do this live with special guests, including Leo, who was on episode 0, who's the CEO and founder of Wired.
And he was on episode.
Oh, he was on Martha.
He was on a Martha episode as well. Number 3, yeah. Just sort of pops in, talks about cows a little bit, and runs the company. So in equal measure.
Fingers in many pies, that man. I was gonna say cows, but
oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, no. That aside, we're also going to have Ash Paulson from Good Vibes Gaming, who was on
Just
last week.
Yeah.
Just last week he was on. He's going to be there as well to talk about some of our journey and how he's been involved in the past there as well. And we're going to have some special developer friends as well.
Exactly.
Where, without spoiling it and going too much down the rabbit hole, we're going to talk about Wired as a family business in terms of how, we all get in the trenches together with our developer partners. I say developer partners, and I don't mean that as like a high level executive. Our developer partners like this, and that.
Vice chairman.
Genuinely, the best way to work is to really get to know each other, become family, and that's conducive to better conversations, better creative synergy. And we're going to go in depth a little bit about that and how we work and why it works so well for us.
Well, it's interesting. There's a little bit of a story about that later on when we speak to the brothers Deetman, as they discuss their relationship with Wired and how that was one of the things that impressed them. Funnily enough, because I went in blind and said, sort of like how did you meet Wired, and it could have been a really boring bit where they go, oh, they just emailed us really, but there was a story and it was good, and it involves 3 time zones and some cockroaches. So, look forward to that in a little bit. Yeah.
And Al Hibbard. Al Hibbard, no longer a part of Wired. He has moved on to our friends at Frontier. He evolved and went on to Journeys and Pastures New. But he was a big part on, meeting the Deepmans, bringing that title to Wired, and what blossomed from there. And again, it goes down to the family thing of, this isn't corporate emails. This is actually, hey, you have made this thing with love. We can feel and recognize that. We want to share that love. And
they really talk about it. It's really really nice. So keep an eye out for that in a little bit. But we're at PAX then, which is fantastic. I'm really looking forward to getting back onto the sort of I don't know, the outside world, man.
Boston pizza.
Boston, exactly.
Back on the Boston pizza.
Exactly. I'm really looking forward to it. So if you're there, let us know, and we'll say hello. So thank you, Aaron, for that. What else is happening in the world of Wired?
There's more, Jake. And so Wired Unplugged is a part of Wired Live, which is our content output from Wired Productions to the world, and. We've had a very extensive conversation about Martha is Dead. We still haven't had Luca on yet, which would be great. But as we mentioned, we did work with Luca and LK to produce Martha Unearthed. Martha Uncovered. Is it Unearthed or Uncovered? Martha Unsomething. No, it's Martha Uncovered.
Exhumed. We could do this all day.
Martha Exhumed. Yes. But episode 9 is out today, and it's a special one. I had a part to play in pulling these together in terms of topics, and as we said, we've been working with them for 4.5 years, and there's so many stories that people won't get to hear and see, and this dives very deep into the care and attention and love given by the team to the art and the scene setting in the game, from a graphical point of view, and all of that stuff. Now, on a previous episode, people seem to think that I had an intense love affair with the cow that is in the game. It's a great cow. I meant that from a very technical standpoint. The man hours, it's a respect to the developers who put the time into the cow, not a physical attraction. To the
record
cow.
States.
just to make that clear. But there are some interesting stories that happened throughout the journey. Like the first time I saw Martha, Leo said, "Oh," and actually, it was the scene that is when Martha is laid to rest in the middle of your house, and there's a guy fell asleep in the chair, which is Martha and Julia's dad, and Leo said, "Do you recognize who that is?" And it's like, no, and it's like, take a closer look, move the mouse and keyboard, get closer. I'm like, oh my god, it's Luca. It is Luca. Luca is the
scanned in sort of thing.
He was scanned in, and it was and you'll find out more about this in the episode. And it was meant to be as a placeholder, but so much care and attention and love was put into it that it was like, oh, actually we could keep we could keep these. So there are lots of members of LKA who are actually represented in the game.
That is
One
interesting.
of the most interesting ones for me, which I only discovered at Gamescom, the last Gamescom that happened in person, and
2019.
it's that yeah, I think it was, and that is that Luca's daughter is Martha and Julia, and in my heart I was like, oh, is that weird? Like, I asked him, I was like, has that been weird? And she just turned to me, and it was the day before the show opened, and we're in the room that Martha's going to be demoed in, and there's just this massive wall that is the Martha is the key art, which Martha's face is on it. And she's there having taken selfies with it. She's like, absolutely amazing.
Of course.
She's like, no, this isn't weird. This is awesome. Look, it's me.
Exactly. Yeah, that's going straight on WhatsApp. Good. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But there's so many stories like that, and there's quite a lot of those nuggets packed into this episode, episode 9. So do watch it, and it's we're not a AAA team with the reach of Microsoft and Sony. However, we do think it's important that people do get a real insight into how these games are developed, what really goes on behind the scenes. It's not it's not that corporate plastic shiny happy, oh, everything's great. It's a true look at the passion and hard work that goes into these projects, and the more people that watch it, the better, because we're doing this for the likes of Lumo and all of our other upcoming games as well.
So just as a point then, for maybe people who are listening on audio platforms, Wired Live is the video service on YouTube by Wired Productions, where you can see the video version of this very podcast, and then, as Aaron alludes to, you can see closer looks and dedicated shows in a way to these specific games. And I think the one about Martha is particularly interesting to those who have had an opportunity now to play through the game. So there's a lot of love that's gone into this, and a lot of love that goes into a lot of what Wired does, which is, again, we'll hear from the brother Deetman about this later. But it seems to be paying off in droves, because the next bit of news that you have...
a segue. That is such a good segue. You that was beautiful. You are such a wonderful man.
Thank you.
But yes, indeed. I think this is, as you say, as you skillfully segued, is a good reflection of recognition of the love and passion that Wired have poured into every project that we touch. We've been fortunate that we have been up for the Best Indie Publisher of the Year award in the MCV Awards, which is incredible, especially when you look at the peers that we're up against as well. The likes of Chucklefish, Curve, No More Robots, Slivering, Fire Shine Games as well. Sold out. And then we're amongst that as well. These, big, wonderful entities that do magical, amazing stuff. To be amongst them is absolutely incredible, to have share a space with them.
Yeah, exactly. And I just wanted to sort of, I always said that this is really a very games industry focused podcast, but for those who are listening in and maybe don't know what MCV is, maybe people listening from outside of the UK specifically, MCV is like one of the most prestigious sort of like media outlets for the games industry. Like, it's really trusted
as a trade.
It is a trade publication. Yeah, exactly. And it's like if you've got like a new hire in your company, you want to get it in MCV. If you get interviewed by MCV, it's a big deal. They do the 30 under 30, the one that matters, according to a lot of people. And there's a lot of love from the industry for this. So to be acknowledged by MCV is really good. And to be among the likes of like Curve and Chucklefish, you know what I mean? It's and the rest too. But you know what I mean? The ilk is nice there. So yeah. You can actually vote, can't you?
Yeah, the interesting thing about the awards this year is that there is no internal jury. This is all based on reader vote. So if you're a subscriber or reader of MCV, you have the power. So if you do love what we do, please do give us a shout. But also, there's so many great people there that I don't want to say, oh yeah, vote for us because you listen to this podcast, but there's
do that.
Consider voting for someone, because your vote will mean a lot,
yeah,
especially to us.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's no. I mean, anecdotally, I didn't know that it was you could vote. I actually didn't. I thought it was just like some sort of jury down south somewhere. Sorry, but so yeah, very good news. So yeah, thank you very much. I mean, I guess we'll just move on to our next segment, which is news we stole from the internet. Coming up after this, we have the Deetman brothers talking about Deliver Us the Moon, the new ports. Not a straight port. There's a lot of hard work gone into it. Ray tracing, space telescopes, grandparents, all that yet to come. But now let's look at the wider games industry news and see what we can pick from this. What has Aaron snatched like Bernard and his watch? Let's go.
News we stole from Google.
That was a little throwback to episode 1 there, where we talked about Bernard's
man,
watch.
I loved it. Master of the segue today.
Well, yeah, I'm feeling fruity, baby. All right, so this is a segment where we look externally into the gaming news as a whole, and it's been a lot of movement, to be honest. Like, in fact, while we're recording, we were just talking about this just before we recorded, but there's lots going on. Like, Microsoft are just doing their like indie showcase thing right now, live on Twitch, and like we got some things coming up later in the week, which we'll find out more. So, Aaron, you've scoured the internet to find some things that are popping, as the kids say. What we got going on?
What's popping? So, first thing, an interesting bit of news that came out is obviously at a previous E3, there was a big announcement that Perfect Dark is being reborn. And not only is Perfect Dark being reborn, however, it is now being fronted by a brand new studio created by Microsoft and Xbox called The Initiative. It's very exciting. Perfect Dark, it started with the team at Rare back on the N64, and then once Rare were acquired, that moved on over to the Xbox 360, and we had the very, very graphically shiny Perfect Dark Zero.
Yeah, and for the folks at home, what type of game is Perfect Dark?
Perfect Dark is imagine GoldenEye, but you don't have the license.
Yeah, so it's a it's a first-person shooter. One of the pioneering first-person shooters of the day on the N64, alongside the likes of James Bond's GoldenEye. For those who are
made by the same team.
Made by the same team, exactly.
Yeah.
And wherein you play as what's her name? Joanna Dark.
Joanna Dark.
Like Joanna
Dark. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So it's an IP that that got quite a lot of interest over the years and things like that. It's got a bit. I don't want to call it a cult following because that implies it's quite small. But like, there's certainly people who remember it. They remember it very fondly. So yeah, it was. This was what. So the initiative was like a West Coast USA AAA studio that was announced, and they'd said that it was sort of the company was founded by Microsoft. For those listening who might be aware of like Microsoft buying established developers and publishers, this one was like forged by Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
absolutely.
So that's the story so far. What next?
That's the story so far. So the initiative was forged beautifully by Microsoft, and it was headed up by two of the senior folks that came from Crystal Dynamics.
Yeah.
So they've been working away on bringing Perfect Dark back to life. However, VGC recently broke the news that it would seem that over the last year, over half of their workforce has left. These are people in very senior positions that would be pulling the strings. And this is actually comes down to the fact that those people didn't feel like they were able to pull the strings, that a lot of the creative decisions were outside of their control. The interesting thing about this is the article's actually been updated now, where the VGC team have been contacted by several other former employers. Their lists have been updated, so it's over 50% now.
Wow.
But I expect that story to develop over time. Not too long ago as well, Crystal Dynamics was brought in to partner and help co-develop the game. However, it now seems, alluded to by VGC as well, that it is probably looking more likely that Crystal Dynamics will take full-on upfront duties on development, which Crystal Dynamics are fantastic, right? Everything they touch is wonderful, even if sometimes their larger publisher entities say this didn't meet expectations when the quality was phenomenal and the sales were still equally phenomenal in terms of everything that was out at a similar time.
Right. So, for those that don't know, some of the roster of talent that they've produced. I mean, most recently and probably least popular in a long time is they did Marvel's Avengers game with the live service game, which was a lot of outside of things.
Yeah.
But you might know them for a lot of the Tomb Raider games. In fact, the
Yeah.
majority of them. And how I will always know them and love them and rue the day that this game was shelved is the Legacy of Kain series. Yeah, that
why have you done this?
I mean, Soul Reaver's one of them.
Soul Reaver, man.
Soul
Blood
Reaver,
Omen.
yeah, this is it. So that's to me when I hear Crystal Dynamics, I think Legacy of Kain. But the point is, they created some really engaging IP, and then they've worked on some established IP in a really good way. So we've seen them take some stuff on. But yeah, I just feel like.
It's interesting, right? Because what does it mean for the initiative? How do you restructure that within the larger scope of the studios? Are they now a support studio? Is Perfect Dark still theirs? Because if you have half of the people leave, development is going to slow down, right? So Crystal Dynamics, they have very healthy full teams. So they have the people power to get things moving, but how much of the original vision and project can be preserved, how much needs to be started again, and really, was Perfect Dark announced too early?
Yeah, well, I mean, just for comparison, if anyone interested, the initiative has about 70 employees. Crystal Dynamics closer to 400. So it's like you say, the initiative's development, their foundation seems to have been built with the clear purpose of making Perfect Dark. So the fact that vision's been lost, does that mean that they're going to be scattered to the winds like the Dwarves of Erebor, and like all those 7 people will just be like Megazord? You know what I mean? Will they all just be consumed by the other Microsoft studios? Like, what will happen to those? Like you say, they might all scatter and help enhance and augment other studios. But I mean,
To Dungeons Deep.
I watched the Lord of the Rings on the weekends, just so you know.
Strong.
So yeah. So I mean, like, look, I'm interested. It's definitely one to watch. So yeah, maybe we can revisit this as the story develops. So
it'll come back. You can do a segue at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think about maybe. Okay. Yeah, like the dwarfs who did return to Erebor.
Yes.
Yeah. Post Smaug.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Cool. So what have we got next?
Something a bit more closer to home for you. Elden Ring has sold 12 million copies.
Yep, absolutely. And by closer to home, just to make it clear for those at home, I have nothing to do with this game other than I'm a big fan. And
that's still an understatement.
Yeah,
still an understatement.
Yeah, I say with my art book behind me. Yes. I've got
that's an Elden Ring beard, isn't it? Let's be honest. You've grown that just plain.
I can tell you the truth. It is. I have not had to shave since Elden Ring launched, and I'm nearly at the platinum trophy. Well, yeah. So Elden Ring. Did you say the news? Did you say what it was? What actually is the mad thing?
The mad thing is that they've sold 12 million copies.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I got blinded. This is what I mean.
I hope it did.
Blinded by the radiant light.
I am aging.
I've actually got some backup trivia for you here about that. 12 million copies. Obviously, it's a big number. Okay. Yeah. Comparatively, Dark Souls 3 took over 4 years to reach 12 million copies.
Wow.
FromSoft internally projected 4 million sales by the end of March for this one. So surpass that. And excluding Nintendo titles, which is probably Breath of the Wild, but I don't know. Excluding Nintendo titles, that's all I know. This is the fastest selling game in history ever put out by a Japanese publisher.
That's incredible.
That's
absolutely incredible, and I can't. I'm very happy for them. I think a lot of people have the misconception that the Souls games are quite niche. However, they always sell very healthily. You know, in terms of media retention as well, that is also healthy. I'm so happy that this has broken through so quickly, and obviously there is a lot of hype for this. And I have to say, it is In my opinion, of the most approachable of the Souls games. You know, the fact
Yeah.
that right at the start of the game, you know, even though you have to die, but you know, they have a training area that you can drop down into, and you get told what the hell you actually
Mm.
have to do and how to control the game,
Yeah.
which is great. But I'm so happy for them because I'm playing it at the moment and I'm in love with it and I can't stop thinking about it. I genuinely, I'm not even just saying that because it's a news piece. Like, I am in love with the experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
There, I've said it. I've said it.
It's up there. You know, it's a beautiful feeling when you like. I think that a lot of games have to sort of ferment in your head, and
Yeah.
then later you go back and you go, do you know what was really really good? This. But sometimes you play a game and you instantly know it's going to be a classic, right? Like
Mm,
I felt like when I played The Witcher 3 because I just moved home and I had no internet for 2 weeks and
yeah.
I had a PS4 and a copy of The Witcher 3 and that was it.
Where you went.
So I booked a week off work to like move boxes. I did all of that in 3 days, and then I just spent the remainder of the time playing The Witcher 3. And I was just, I remember like I didn't have a mobile phone at the time, so I remember it like the screen had smashed, and like
Yeah.
the insurance was nutty on it. So I was just like, I'm gonna wait till the end of my contract in a month. So I couldn't even look at the outside world. So I was playing this game, and I was going, am I mad, or is this one of the best games I've ever played? And it turns out that it just was. But Elden Ring's one of them where I'm playing it, and I was lucky enough to play it pre-launch, and I was going, the world's gonna go mad. But I can't tell if it was just the fanboy in me, but you know, and I'm getting to the point now where I'm watching the discourse change online. People are discussing the something I love about these games, but a lot of people aren't that into, is the fact that they've put some really detailed, well-made areas behind some really weird things. Like you have to like
Yeah.
lie in a
Yeah.
coffin
The
for
chest
30
behind
seconds.
a waterfall.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's like a 6 hour area. There's like an area towards the end of the game. This isn't a spoiler. I won't mention anything else. But towards the end of the game, there is a secret location which has about 12 bosses and about 20 hours of content, and it's so
Damn.
missable. And it's just like, what the heck? Like, I just have no idea how brave those production meetings need to be for them to go, do we want everyone to experience this? And someone's just gone, nope. Let them have that as a treat for
This
exploring.
is a reward.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
so brave, because you know
yeah.
we know more than the average Joe, I guess, that the effort put in. You just on about Martha, you on about all of that. Imagine somebody said, "Do you know what would be good? Let's hide a third of this game behind some random thing, like you have to look in that cow's eyes for 30 seconds." Yeah, and then he'll headbutt you, knock you unconscious, and you wake up in a different realm. Like,
Yeah.
like that's the ballsy decision
Mm.
making that they've got to do, and like it must be like a potential waste of resources if you were thinking about who gets to experience it all. But I love that they've just gone, look, this is not a cinematic experience. This is a video. Like the other thing that I'm absolutely loving, the story. No one knows what's going on. No one's even put a theory up properly. It's brilliant, and yeah, I absolutely love that. That you have to really piece together. Oh, so this means oh, brilliant. So yeah,
I love it. I love it though because the story is your story, right? There's the world
yeah,
and the setting, and then there are people in that world that you can meet, and then you can piece together whatever you want. And that's the thing that I love about it. It's not,
absolutely.
this is exactly what is going on. It's like, oh, actually, it reminds me of you know, playing games on the Super Nintendo or earlier than that, and you know, you'd have these little pixely sprites that
Mm,
look like smudges now. Um, but the reading of the manual that would come with the game, and you'd see
yeah,
this beautiful thing, and you'd read what the backstory is and what's going on,
yeah,
and then that would inform you. That would just fill your head, and then that is what you see.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I love it because you know, El- Elden Ring gives you a a path to follow of sorts,
yeah.
and I beat Market, yeah,
Congratulations. Yeah,
and then I decided, you know, I know that I can just go up into this castle area now where I'm supposed to go. I turned around and I went, that looks interesting over there, and I've gone on some completely different random adventure, and it's my adventure, and I'm like, this is, it's great, it's great. It's like it feels like a proper adventure
yeah,
with a lot of death, but it just feels so good. The way there was one boss that that I was fighting, and it it was I can't remember what it was called actually, but I just kept doing it again and again and again and again and again and again because I'd die. And the way I thought about it is like, this is actually, I don't feel like this is hard. I feel like I I've come off a roller coaster and then I'm deciding to go straight back onto it right away. I'm just like, yep, put me on again, put me on again.
That's great. Yeah, you know the thing about these games that I love the most, and it's like when you're not on the other side of it, it's very easy to think someone like is just exaggerating. But when you've beaten Margie or whatever, you'll go back to him and you'll batter him next time. Like you are reward like Sekiro, the last FromSoft game. I died. That's the most I've ever died to a boss. Was the final boss of Sekiro. I died about 25 times. Since then, I can beat them without even getting touched. Like to get the platinum, you need to get like New Game Plus. So you need to beat it at least 3 times. And I can do them without even getting hit now. And that just shows the fairness of it all, as well as the it's a lot about that. It teaches you a lot. So
I have seen, just to your point there as well, I have seen some people who have obviously learnt the game very quickly, and they're posting clips where it's like it's nothing, and they're standing right in front of the thing, like, yep, I'll do a jump here, take a step back.
Yeah.
And it's like hairline thing, and it's like it just looks so casual. It's like, yep, jump, bump, slash, dead.
Yeah, well, a friend of mine is quite well known for doing the Souls games on Dance Dance Revolution map, like done 1, 2, and 3, and Bloodborne on a DDR pad. You can go on YouTube and find her, but she's prepping for an Elden Ring run, and I'm just like, good luck. And it is a run when you're using your feet, isn't it? So
yeah, I bet.
So yeah, Elden Ring. Thank you, Aaron, for that one. What else have we got in the news?
Interesting. So last week, we tried to be psychic once again and guess what was going to be in the state of play with PlayStation. You were the most accurate, really. With
I said
Stranger of Paradise Beta. Yeah. And let's be honest, you were right. They released the demo.
Not impressive,
but everything else kind of fell flat on its face. But the one thing that was mentioned by you as well was Silent Hill.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Silent Hill.
Oh my god.
And interestingly, our next news piece is Konami have updated their Silent Hill trademark in Japan. And it's believed that multiple games are in development. Now, what can you take from this? 1, excitement, cool. 2, trademark updates happen all the time. It's just something that has to be done. It doesn't necessarily mean that something new is happening.
Not cool.
And multiple games to be believed to be in development. I'll tell you a story. I can't actually give you very specifics, but I once had the pleasure of working on a prototype for a Silent Hill game as a concept with a developer. That's all I'll say. And essentially what was happening is several developers were given a brief. What would you see as a Silent Hill experience? All the studios put something together and submit them and say, what do you think? And they'll be like, this isn't what we had in mind. This isn't what we had in mind. And that's why, I think it was the era, actually, the Wii era, where you saw Shattered Memories.
Yeah.
Silent Hill Shattered Memories with the whole ice theme. And that's why you saw new weird additions to the Silent Hill formula. But I had the pleasure of doing that. So, when it is said that, hey, multiple games might be in development, it could be the case that actually several people have been given an opportunity to pitch.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Konami do this all the time. I have little to no insider knowledge about this. By little to no, I mean no insider knowledge about this. But I think it might be my favorite. Like my most wanted. Like before Fable was announced, Fable was the IP. But that had a tinge of sadness in the sense that Lionhead Studio were essentially shelved, and then the Fable developers all went their own way. And I actually make an active point of looking for all the Lionhead staff's projects and trying to support. So we've got more stuff to share. More stuff to share.
What you did there.
Yeah. So about that, when I heard there was some Fable people working on a project, I was very excited. So Silent Hill is now
That's
most.
Tin Hearts, by the way. We have announced.
Oh,
it, so
we
we'll
can
get-
say
it's
yeah.
announced.
Okay, yeah, okay. Whew, I didn't know if it was. You're right. So
Yeah,
okay. So, Tin Hearts has got this really nice aesthetic, and when I knew that it's got this, I don't know. I don't want to sound a little bit too patriotic or anything like that, but like with Fable, that British
Yeah.
humor runs and like you really get it,
Yeah,
don't you?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, anyway, so Konami, Silent Hill, that is my dream IP. Silent Hill 2, top 3 for me in terms of games ever made. Like, I played it again recently. I would love and you know I'm an influencer relations guy, right? And I watched in awe as PT. Shivered the spine of the entire world. And behind me, for those that are looking at us, what's that? What do I always say? Listening with the eyes, viewing. this picture here is by Junji Ito, who's a very established horror manga artist, the best there's ever been, in my opinion. And Junji Ito makes disgusting humanoid body horror inspired creatures, and he was consulting on PT allegedly with Kojima. So look, give me like, and also Kojima doing a horror game, please. So I think I know what the games in development are, if they exist. I think I know, but
Yeah.
but can we get that PTX, because that changed the world, that inspired everybody, and it wasn't even the first game to do it, but it just inspired so many indie horror games are inspired by PT the same way as so many games were inspired by like Silent Hill, the likes of like Deadly Premonition and things like that. So it's an incredibly inspirational IP. I feel like it's a game developer's IP. I feel like that's the one where people look. So what we do know, though, Aaron, is that the original OG Team Silent, who were the people responsible for this, which coincidentally had like that little, like kind of like a Wired Live deep dive, one of the first ones I ever saw of that was about Silent Hill. Yeah. And it's fascinating, and Fable, and that's why I love the Wired Live stuff, because it's a really nice sort of behind the scenes look. Anyway, a lot of these guys have made their own studio now called it's like a Bokeh, Bokeh, Bokeh Studios. That's them lot, innit? And they're making something. That's the OG
I had no idea.
Guys, yeah. So like lead artist, lead writer and stuff. So but I think they're doing something with a new IP. So who knows? But that is, as you can tell, something very close to my heart, something I'm very interested in. Everything. I am dying.
I picked it. I picked this just because you're here. I'm
Well,
gonna be honest. Like,
well, I'm glad. Thank you. Yeah, and and
it's
again,
my gift to you.
Thank you very much. If you have played a Silent Hill game, let me know what your favourite one is by emailing in at unplugged@wiredproductions.com. That's unplugged@wiredproductions.com. Silent Hill 1.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, man.
I did try and play it once again on the PS Vita.
Yeah.
Whew, games have come again, like we mentioned earlier about pixels and then reading the books and to get all the proper images and stuff. The game does not look good anymore, and I'm like, how did I get the fear from this?
Yeah.
But I remember playing it, and every single second was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And as soon as the sun started to go down in the real world, no, I'm not. I'm not carrying on. Seriously,
yeah, that's what my mum was like. She could only play it in the daytime, and I always found that really fascinating.
It's terrifying.
So yeah, that's how's this for a segue? Interestingly, you mentioned Konami being missing from the last Sony State of Play that was on what we tried to correctly predict. Aaron, what else do we know about Sony State of Play?
Well, Jake, you're just teeing them up so well. So Hogwarts Legacy, that was announced some time ago and has been in a state of flux in terms of when is it going to release. And now, interestingly, there has been announced that there's going to be a state of play on Thursday. If you listen to this when it goes live, that means yesterday.
Yep.
So we're going to get a full deeper dive into what this game is, how it functions, and what sort of RPG it is and what experience it is. And I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm looking forward to seeing it. But we're not going to put the world to rights here. There's obviously concern about J.K. Rowling's involvement, and should anyone like Harry Potter anymore? And it comes down to that whole age-old question of if you support the art, does it mean you support the artist? Can you, can you separate them? And I have my own opinion on this. I have a very particular attachment to Harry Potter. And so I'll go first on this.
Okay. All right.
So I will always enjoy Harry Potter. Basically, I would always go to the midnight launches for the books with my nan. And they were incredible because so many people would turn up, and getting to spend time with my nan, and then usually I'd go stay at hers, and my aunt would be there, and then my dad's cousin would fly over from Ireland, so we could all do it together, and then we'd sit in the sit in the night after the midnight launch and start reading, and then we'd talk at breakfast the next morning about where we've got to and what we think's happening, and the very precious moments to me. I mentioned before, people get old, and my nan fell ill, and Harry Potter and the Cursed Child came out, the book version. So obviously she wasn't well enough to actually go and enjoy the stage show. I haven't enjoyed the stage show myself. It's impossible to get tickets.
I was about to say it was impossible, and it's impossible now, years later.
It still is, yeah. But I remember my mom sending me a video, and like I said, she wasn't really with herself. But my mom sent me a video of my nan reading it in her room, and like they were just doing a read through together as my family, and my nan started reading some. And then she just turns to the camera, and then she starts talking. She kind of forgot who people were and things like that, but she turns to the camera and she's like, do you think Aaron's reading this? And then she'd, memories would unlock for her about, going to the midnight book launches and stuff. And it's just something that I have to hold close to my heart. That does not mean that I endorse any vitriol that could be being put out into the world. If people who love Harry Potter look into the full core line of Harry Potter and the story, there you have Harry Potter, this child, the boy who lived, versus the ultimate evil of Voldemort, right? Invincible, can't die. But the whole story is about love conquering all. So if everyone takes that message to heart, they can conquer the badness in the world if they stick together and take that message to heart. So over to you, Jake.
Well, I disagree completely. No, I'm joking. Yeah. No, it's a difficult one, and I just hope that, like, you really can't, for people listening from outside of the UK, it's really hard to actually understand how much of a personality trait, like in Harry Potter, is for millennial British people. It really is. Like, everybody knows what their Hogwarts house is. The same way that Gen Z girls know their star sign. It's like it's a huge part of British culture, because the entire nation was affected by, what is essentially like top tier escapism. And I think everybody could fall into those stories in one way or another. It has been written by somebody who's, since the book has launched, since the art was published, has taken some stances that have been very, very controversial, and it's something I've always kind of like thought about before the internet's like I'm quite into horror. I'm quite into horror literature, and a lot of horror literature is like Victorian era ghost stories of a very clever man whose only crime is being too clever, and he awakens the ghost, a vengeful spirit, inside a ring or a necklace or something. But and the very deep rooted in like religion, it's but then I heard about this author who wrote like sort of more science fiction focused horror, and this guy called H.P. Lovecraft, who is
that guy. Yeah,
considered one of the best authors ever. Also happens to be massively racist because he was a product of
I
the
did not know that.
1910s. Yeah, well, most people were back then. Do you know what I mean? That's the truth of the matter, isn't it? So there's certain elements of his stories that are probably quite shit when you think about it. Allegories for different races, like particularly not keen on Dutch people and stuff like that. But it's difficult because you can draw on like real world like issues and problems with people for a lot. Like actually, and I'm not trying to like tar anyone with the same brush as J.K. Rowling or even H.P. Lovecraft, but I just want to make the point that a huge inspiration for Tolkien when he was writing the Lord of the Rings was his experiences in World War II, and it's often cited that the orcs represent the German soldiers. So does that mean he's saying that Germans are orcs? Absolutely not. Probably not. Anyway,
there was also with because that's the thing as well, right? If you're gonna write about a good representation, the bad is probably going to creep in as well. I mean, this is it was said that Tolkien really loved horses because, and that's why they're so prominent in the Lord of the Rings, because he was in charge of breaking the horses in, and it was also the last war before proper machinery came in, and he got to witness the ushering in of the tank and the industrialization of that machine and the effect it has on, at that time, and in comparison, the romantic side of conflict as it was written. This is so there's inspirations all over the places.
Exactly, and unfortunately with J.K. Rowling, it's something that's so prominent on social media and things like that it deeply upsets me that so many people are getting something that they love. Your experience, obviously, they're very, very personal. Like mine is just as simple as my wife and my daughters, especially my eldest daughter who's 11, absolutely loves Harry Potter. We went to Harry Potter, and so like everyone I know is looking forward to playing this game, but people are having to take, especially people who work in the games industry and journalists and content creators specifically, are having to make a decision on whether or not they want to cover this and support it. And so I'll just be as open about it as I can. I think my stance on it is as simple as this: J.K. Rowling, I don't agree with her. I think she sucks. But like, it's the same way as not shopping on Amazon is going to affect Jeff Bezos. It won't. It will not make a difference at this point. She's like the most like rich author alive ever in history. So don't worry about her not getting a penny ever again. It's not about that, but it's also about if you feel like putting your money on this game is somehow supporting, and you don't feel comfortable with that, then by all means. But it's a very difficult one, and it is
difficult. It is very difficult, right? Because I don't agree with her views. Let's just put that out there. I'm not playing ball with that. However, on the flip side as well, she's also done a lot of humanitarian stuff and aid and support for other individuals around the world, and donated a lot of money to good causes. However, I do not, which is great. If anyone's going to help someone, fantastic. But I don't agree with the thoughts and opinions. So, but as you said, people working on the game. If you go onto the Hogwarts Legacy website, the first thing you'll see is a Q&A, and there are like 4 questions in that worded in very different ways. Is J.K. Rowling involved in this game? Written in 4 different ways, and essentially the answer is no. She created the world of Harry Potter. Portkey Games and Warner Brothers have the right to work within that world, but this isn't a story that she is involved with, has written, yada yada. Now, like you said, there are people working on this game that have worked very hard on it. So it'd be great to support their work, because obviously a lot of love and passion has gone into this. You can't rightly say that every individual is good. You can't rightly say every individual is bad that's working on the game either, because it's an unknowable quantity.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. If should the game be judged on its own merits, or is there opportunity to question the source of the material?
I'm interested just before we wrap it up and we take it over to the Deetmans. Just wanted to quickly ask: did you play the old ones, like on the PlayStation 1?
Yes, yeah, Hagrid.
Sick in
I
it.
did, I did, and you fight the boars on the gate for some reason, and
It's wicked, man. Like,
yeah,
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 I'm looking forward to it. So
yeah.
look, we're gonna refresh by taking you to meet our special guests. Take you to the moon, baby. We still don't have a jingle for this one. So
To the moon.
I'm so glad that you're into that. I really am. You're going to meet two wonderful men who have decorated their desks for this interview. That was desks for this interview, and they have they've got a lot to show and tell. You will learn a lot about space, cinema, and Wired Productions in this. And I've got to say, I just met these guys today, and
Were they wearing their spacesuits for this?
I'll tell you this: they weren't, but
Okay.
they were wearing some t-shirts and that. But it's good. They had the guns out. You know what I mean? They're pretty hench guys. I've got to tell you.
To be fair, I've always thought this. The first time I ever met the Deepmans as well. If you met one of them in isolation, you would think that they are like a super hot EDM superstar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just
They
look
like
so
a trance
they're wonderful.
act. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
dead right. But so shouts out to the Deepmans, and if you're listening, you're the best. So let's go. Koen, Paul, thank you very much for joining me on Wired Unplugged for a chat with yourselves. It's a blessing. And the last couple of episodes I've done, I haven't had a good interview segment. They've all been like all at once. So I've had like Aaron, who's like our co-host on, and we've been talking amongst ourselves loads, and the poor guests have had to sit there and wait for their interview segment like this. Do you know what I mean? Listening to us talking about like Pokemon or whatever we're on about. So this is good because this is all about you guys. And I want to say a big thanks to you for making such an effort with you got some awards there. This is an audio podcast too, but if you want to go on YouTube, yeah, there's like what have we got? There's like a big like neon light. What's going on?
We got some neon action going on there as well. The logo, of course, our penguin that we always hold very close to the hearts as our company logo. So that's what you see there. It's very bright, isn't it? Yeah.
It looks radiant. It looks like the sun. You know what I mean? And I'd like
beaming love.
Yeah, exactly. And what's funnier is my face is brighter than usual as well, so it looks like it's directly related. Yeah, but it's a really nice setup. So nice one. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Me and Aaron have just done our best to do like a big up intro to you before this, then we transition into you. But I think it would be really useful for the people at home to hear a little bit about you, who you are, and what you do.
So it starts literally, we're brothers, so we both have the same surname. My name is Koen Deetman, and in front of me, that's Paul Deetman. And I think we're very much played into each other when it comes to the business and the creative side of things. But how we tend to see things now is more or less I'm at the development side of things, and Paul is more at the managing and production side of things, and usually also a bit of marketing and especially going on with the other company. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think the whole idea in creating these entertainment games started very early on. I think we started in the garden playing James Bond and Star Wars with our video cam stolen from our dads, and I think that's where the whole thing started to make cool entertainment products, which led to starting a company later on. Yeah, absolutely.
It's great to hear because you don't often get like siblings that start a business together. Me and my sister can't even make Christmas dinner together without arguing. So, but I suppose you know you guys literally don't know anyone else as close to you as your own brother. So it's a really cool thing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. So it's no secret then that you guys make games for a living, and specifically a game called Deliver Us the Moon, which originally launched way back in 2018, and has since then launched on PlayStation 4, Windows, Xbox. Got some more launch news on the way, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But for those who are unfamiliar with the project, how would you describe Deliver Us the Moon? What would you tell the people about the game?
Yeah, it takes place in the future, so it's especially with an environmental message in mind. When if we use all these resources on Earth and we depleted everything, this game really takes place at that point. And because we really love the whole space and going to space and the more realistic vibe to it, the realism, the hard sci-fi, um, space place, we thought like, well, why not make a game out of, what would happen if a future like that would exist, and what does it look like? And and on the
It's
we,
very, it's very grounded. So it's a very grounded sci-fi adventure game woven into this narrative. It's just something very close to the heart. Like our granddad was somebody who made telescopes, and we said like, okay, why not make a game about kind of like what is further, what's the next step, what is the next frontier, and that's space for us, and that was something so cool. To create and story, like we couldn't be astronauts now, or at least we didn't chose that path. We said, okay, but we can make a game how it feels like to be an astronaut, and that's kind of in the heart of the whole game. Is what is it to be an astronaut?
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I was going to ask, of all the game worlds that you could craft, as fantastical as video games could be, what's the sort of story behind you choosing to set a game in space and also being so grounded with it. And I suppose a lot of that does come from the inspiration from your grandfather and things like that. Did he ever talk to you about space? I suppose you were looking out there a lot, but what did anything that you can remember him mentioning specifically about it, or was it his stories that inspired you to learn more, anything like that? Do you think that that's an inspiration?
I remember a time where he was, because he had a couple of telescopes, of course, built, and always there was one that was the largest, like the biggest telescope. And of course, when you're a kid, you're like, "Wow, what does that thing do?" And when he set it up at some point, I think we had like a night that we stayed over. It was a very nice bright moon outside, and this is actually funny. He put it up in the living room, and like just going outside to the garden door so you can literally see the moon. And it was that moment that we said, oh, now we're going to see that big telescope in the works. And it always took a lot of time, because that, you have to kind of sharpen the thing and you have to use a couple of lenses. Oh, that's bad. And I remember when I looked into that, usually in most telescopes, of course, you look through like the end part of it, but because it was such a big one, there's like these small parts on the side, and I looked and peeked through it, and I've never realized to see craters this up close of the moon. So probably that left an impact, why the moon is also very ominous with us.
That's quite the impression, definitely.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting that that stuck with you, and you've kind of kept that like consistent thought through, from childhood to now. And did you mentioned grounded sci-fi? I'm interested about that a little bit because I kind of grew up just well. The first big sci-fi movie I remember was like the Star Wars prequels. Yeah, so for people
Yeah.
listening who are a little bit older, they'll be like, "Oof, really?" But now I think we're in an age of like sci-fi being pretty grounded, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of like interpersonal stories and things. It's not always about like huge armies of alien invaders. Like I think some of the really big sci-fi movies over the last few years have been like Ex Machina, and like even the sequel to Blade Runner probably could have been huge in scope, but it's still always about like what's it like to be human. I was wondering if it, like what inspiration from things outside of video games you drew upon from Deliver Us to the Moon, and was it this sort of more grounded sci-fi, or were you looking at the extremities of sci-fi? Like, what's your relationship with it, and how did you draw inspiration from sci-fi into the game?
If you think in terms of movies, of course, Stanley Kubrick and the stories of Space Odyssey, but also Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, which is always kind of a story that sometimes is close to the heart, but somewhat philosophical, especially 2001 Space Odyssey, but also a more obvious one, Duncan Jones' Moon, as a movie. And as we love that so much to create a game, of course, you need to play, you need to fool around with it. Also, we love this whole cinematic, big blockbuster experience. So we try to combine these things into the game. So, of course, while puzzling your way through, while discovering the narrative, there's also a very much cinematic feel to it, while still having control as the player.
Yeah, and would you say that that was a direct, reaction to you being inspired by cinema like that? Have you always been like into movies like big time? Because you mentioned some films there that I don't think people would have seen, like Moon, for example. Not just
Yeah,
yeah. But is that something that you've always been really interested in? Or did
it's
you?
funny. Yeah, Duncan Jones, who of course created Moon, was a big inspiration in the very early concept phases. That was actually coined by Paul because he came actually up with the early concept called Moon Man, someone living on the moon. That eventually was our project title. That also derived into a comic book eventually. So
It was
it,
supposed to be a 4-month
yeah,
project.
yeah.
It's a
Uh,
little longer than that.
yeah, and I have to say, and yeah, that's really it stuck with us, and it kind of, after a while of producing a game or a prototype in something that we weren't very, let's say, yeah, we didn't want to debut with anything like that. We said, no, this is something we have to go for,
Mm.
and yeah, discovering Unreal Engine, for example, at that point was very pivotal to have these tools at your hands that you don't necessarily have to take care of so much of the graphical pipeline, for example, to put a very realistic appearance on the spot there, that you could actually do with a relatively small team rather than being a big AAA studio.
Let's talk about that a little bit more then. Why don't we talk a little bit about sort of past lives and things like that? What experience did you guys have before you decided we are going to make a video game and we're going to do it ourselves? And what were like the challenges that you faced when you decided that okay, we're really doing this?
Funny enough, I have an audio engineering background, so way more in audio.
Hmm.
And Koen, you have more of a background in like IT, in the actually the early studies into game design, but it wasn't called that way yet.
No, I think practically saying is we were always fond of games and cinema, of course, but we honestly don't have actually a very clear background. Like we've worked for 10 years at a AAA studio or at a big movie producer or something. So it absolutely started with the kitchen table, with zero money, with nothing, without a team, with the whiteboard of her sister. We started drawing up an idea like, hey, those big AAA companies around there, like for example in the Netherlands, there's one that like really creates their own IP, and that's called Guerrilla Games, of course,
Hmm.
making Killzone and Horizon, and of course latest for Forbidden West. And we thought like, wow, wouldn't that be cool to attempt like that, like
Yeah,
second AAA developer to set out on that adventure? So
very inspiring to see like a Dutch company working on such a huge level on entertainment, and that's also what inspired us. So indeed, we kind of started pretending to be a company, and just and just work, like let's do it, and let's see, we'll find out. Kind of like naivety is a bliss, I guess. Just going for it and see what the path may bring.
yeah,
That's a really nice um, way to hear that. Naivety is a bliss I've never heard, but I quite enjoy that. Like personally for me, like all the things that I've managed to do in my career has been a similar way, almost like against the education system. I've not been funneled through school to be where I am, so I always like to hear stories like that of people deciding. And we had the founders of Wired Productions on the very first episode to talk about their founding story, and it also involves a sort of kitchen table. I think most
yeah.
good things happen in the kitchen is one thing that this podcast has been teaching people. So
Usually it's one of the biggest tables in the house, and you can fit a team around.
yeah, that's exactly what it is, isn't it? So
Yeah.
you've decided now we're gonna make a game. This is really happening, and then you've decided to draw on your expertise. And how much of like your life can you remember back then was just you learning things that you just had no idea about? Like, did you feel like it was learning another language?
For Paul and me, it was from the get go. I mean, usually, and the first independent developers really stood up in the early 2010, 11 era.
Mm.
And what you saw is that most of them really are very good at creating something beautiful. I mean, there's such beautiful games out there, but when we started this, we knew the business side of things that usually is the dullest, or you never want to really touch those areas. Like, do I have to do my taxes? Do I have to fill this whole thing? Do I have to register myself? All that stuff is in essence the core of a success story, because if you can handle those things and keep that in mind, but also the first time you have to sell this is, or you have to sell it to an audience or to a like an investor or a publisher. And so starting selling your game or what you want to make, your idea, was immediately ingrained in our startup phase, I
Yeah.
think.
No, so in the beginning, of course, you're doing a lot of things yourself. So you're wearing many hats and you're bouncing between disciplines. But then very early on, we said like, okay, we need to delegate this and we need to find people that actually can put all their time and effort into this single discipline and are better than us. So not by us just trying and fooling around and being this very stubborn director saying this need exactly be the imagination in my head needs to be
Mm.
exactly what we see in the game. No, you actually find the right people that are way better than you that tell you what to do. And that's what we did. And then of course we focused very early on the marketing side of things. People got to know what are we making, what is our vision.
Yeah, that it's quite interesting to hear, and to hear people understand that more and more. It's a lot more difficult to be an auteur in video game development. Unlike like movies, you hear a lot about the writer, director, editor sometimes, and it's very rare to see that in the video game space. Hideo Kojima maybe being the only like major example, I suppose. Who I think coincidentally worked alongside Gorilla on Death Stranding. I think didn't they use
Yeah.
some of that
Yeah.
engine or something like that? So there's a lot to talk about in terms of immersion in the game, and if I think when people are starting out on YouTube and things like that, one of the first tips people learn is the video is okay, but audio really matters, and sound design's something that is clearly a very strong point. I think, in fact, for the people watching, you can see an award there on the table. Paul, you mentioned sound design being, well, audio engineering specifically being something that you're particularly good at. Can you talk me through how you kind of went about that process? Developing the sounds of, well, I don't know, space and the objects that go into it, I suppose.
So, like I said before, like eventually you can't do everything on your own anymore.
Mm.
So we found something incredibly talented, which is Sander van Zanten, and he could dedicate all his time to not only the soundtrack but also the sound design and the
Mm.
implementations, which is a little bit more of the technical side. Of course, with some help of our programmers as well. And I have to say, to create the palette, we started with a palette that was a little bit different for what it is today, and then we changed it somewhere quite early in development. We changed the whole sound palette into something a little bit more minimalistic, very close and heartfelt, something that portrayed the loneliness as you go through the experience as the astronauts. And I think yeah, it was amazing. It's I think a 70 track album now of all the music is being used in the game, also in the marketing beats. And um, privileged enough, he won an award for best soundtrack in a game. For I think it's the biggest prestige award here in the Netherlands for sound and for music. And we also won best sound design from the Gang Awards. So that's yeah, just an extra cherry on the cake when creating such a beautiful game. Very important for a game like that we are creating to have that experience. So half of the experience is almost the sound that you have. Funny enough, in space there's no sound, so we needed to, of course,
Hmm.
figure out how to do that. But I'm very happy what the result is.
Yeah, and I think maybe important to know is that how do you find someone like that? But he just literally walked in the studio.
Yeah.
There's nothing to say about anything else. He just walked into the studio in a test case we once put out in our old like a prototype, and he just said like, "Hi, I'm Sander, and I'm going to test your game." And
Yeah, and I also
that's
make music.
and I also make
Yeah.
music. So and funny enough is that is maybe important as much as he is very good and talented. It's
Mm.
also because we knew that we should enable someone. So as Paul's already said, we won't say you have to do it like this. It's more or less, can we make someone's passion work in a project and make it understandable?
Yeah, giving him room to breathe ended up being a huge part of the success, which is brilliant to hear. And it's quite funny that he just walked in. So that's funny.
Very happy he did. Very happy.
Yeah, I can imagine. The game immersion kind of just expanded from the initial launch with like the addition of ray tracing being added for the PC, which took a lot. And I'm excited to sort of remind people that Wired will be announcing soon that Deliver Us to the Moon's launching on Next Gen 2, and there's an incoming sort of Stadia launch that there was a trailer for very recently. I was curious to know what the biggest sort of benefits and drawbacks have been of sort of porting or making a copy of the game for Next Gen and for Stadia.
So I would say start with the lucky part that we, once we were with Wired, we early enough decided to put ray tracing on the game that resulted in the first Unreal Engine game that would support this in
Wow.
2019. So if you would take that, idea and you would stretch that into next gen, I have to say that. Um, I think Deliver Us to the Moon aged rather well, but if you see how it's funny because I sometimes see ray tracing now, I'm like, wow, I never even finished the game entirely like this.
No.
But it even baffles me how good the game still looks with that. And I can say if you would play with ray tracing on and have those effects, especially on those next gen consoles, are it's just mind blowing how the game still pulls through. I would say as in the next gen, and very proud on that. And principles were done, of course, with ray tracing in the beginning.
And on the porting side of things, sometimes people think it's just one press on the button and then it poops it out to all these platforms. Would be great. It would be great if it worked like that, but it's costing a lot of time, a lot of like QA to test it, so a lot of quality assurance. Make sure that it's like the best experience on all these platforms. So we are doing our best to get them to all platforms that you just announced.
Yeah. And maybe on Stadia, that's a special one because, and I really experienced it myself. I have now two kids that are very young, and what I happen to have always is when I want a game, it's usually your console's updating, and you're, oh wait, there's also a game update, and that's, oh, it's 50 gigs, nice. And then you're an hour further, and then, oh, I actually cannot play anymore. So once I found that out, I was like, wow, what's Stadia? I mean, some people say, does that still exist? Like, absolutely. It's very handy to just drop in and you immediately drop in a game. I remember even when Cyberpunk came out, it was actually running pretty well on there. And I thought like, well, this whole cloud gaming thing is absolutely good for discovery, and that's how I discover games nowadays. To you turn your Stadia on and you see like a couple of cool games on there, like, oh, cool, let me try this. And if you really, really are about the details and you're like, I want a native thing, of course, you can have many platforms that you can choose, but it's an interesting platform. And yeah, I'm proud that it will come to it.
It's great to reach out to a bigger audience. There's still a lot of like space lovers that need to witness Deliver Us to the Moon. So
Definitely.
That's definitely a nice way to reach them as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that, and it's something that it's if you're perhaps and I don't mean this to sort of judge anybody, but like the people who are very very particular about the particulars are more often than not the same people that don't have kids and have woke up at 5 in the morning to feed them and just want to try and have their morning coffee and play a game before they have to start work. But I've been there, and I know exactly what you mean. So it's very interesting, and I think that one of my favorite things about seeing next gen ports and things like that is that because of streamers and content creators and things like that, there's so many people who are just constantly starting their journey into video games, and people are discovering games. What one game for some reason that comes up a lot whenever I'm talking to people is I played The Last of Us and I realized that video games could be cinematic, and then they learn, that there's a whole backlog of games. But with Deliver Us the Moon being 2018, there'll be people who have just got into gaming since then and are looking for these cinematic experiences, and it's a sort of fantastic opportunity for the people to just have it in front of them on the stores and be like, oh, Um,
Yeah.
so like I mean, we're on a Wired Unplugged podcast. It might be a really boring story. I don't actually know what the story is, so you're going to tell me. How how did you meet Wired? Sometimes the stories are really good, and sometimes it's just like, oh, they emailed me.
This is good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay.
We we actually we met Wired on a very exhausting phase where we so we had like a trip planned to the US because of course we're doing marketing and we already released the game like with an open ending. But then again, we went to, I think was a GDC San Francisco. We went to
Yes.
Los Angeles and we went to Boston. So we were flying to whole North America,
It was back to back
back
2
to
weeks
back.
traveling.
And we said like, hey, we need to talk to some people to get the right partner for Deliver Us the Moon. And I think we talked to every publisher,
Yeah.
every outlets, PlayStation, Microsoft, Sony, all the publishers that you could think of.
It was nonstop.
Non-stop, no sleep. I think it was like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, maybe at most.
Right.
And then in 3 weeks or two and a
I
half
have
weeks,
to
just
I have to
pushing
make
it.
this story a little worse because we were literally, I mean, we were trying to get the game like with another publisher, but there's also a thing that you have to be careful on the cost. And I remember us in at GDC, we were just on the brink of like Tenderloin. And if there's any place in San Francisco you don't want to be, it's called Tenderloin. So never book anything there. It's rough. Let's call it
pretty-
like that.
Pretty rough. I think a dog got killed on the on the other room, which was hard to sphere. But we needed to get your sleep, so I hope the dog actually survives.
I was happy there was a lock on the door.
definitely. I think you said to me as well, like, "Hey, what is moving? Is that you, Paul?" No, it was actually a cockroach.
I
So-
woke up with a cockroach on my neck.
Wow,
It's absolutely.
So no, but of course, like jokes aside, it was also something to push. We needed to be there, and of course, as an indie company, you don't have a lot of money, so you need to
Right.
just deal with kind of the things that you have around you and the possibilities that you have. So we pushed through. We went to all the talks. We talked to everybody, and I think we took a bus to Los Angeles, and from Los Angeles we did a flight to Boston. And then in Boston, I think on the fourth day, because we were also during all this meetups with everybody, we were also showcasing Deliver Us the Moon, which
Yeah.
is like all the
Ah.
people on the floor, and this is quite
So
exhausting.
Boston was PAX East, I assume.
Absolutely.
PAX East,
Yeah.
yes.
Right.
And I think on the fourth day we were doing
No,
also
yeah,
interviews.
Paul, that's true. It was the first time that PAX was 4 days, and we were like, "What? We're just these two guys, and it's 4 days." And we've done that in 2017 and 16, but 4 days with the two of us was like really tough.
Yeah.
And then I remember, it's funny that I was talking to a couple of guys, Warp Digital,
Reporting, yeah.
or and for some porting talks, and then they said like, hey, you should actually talk to Wired. So I started looking them up, and I sent a message through Twitter like, hey, are you guys here at PAX? And I actually got a response like, yeah, what do you want? Like, should we meet? Yeah, we're on the mega, yeah, what's the mega booth?
Yeah,
of
mega
course.
booth.
And it's like, okay, well, we'll drop by. And then I remember of all like,
It was not a best pitch. Like it was the fourth. It was the fourth day, and we were all on the end of the 3 weeks. We were completely exhausted. Didn't sleep very well. Doing a pitch, it was somewhat okay, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think they went back to the booth and saying like, yeah, we're gonna review this in a month. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we were looking at each other like,
Okay, shit.
oh, damn, okay.
Yeah.
But then he came back and he said like, no, we know about you guys, so we're gonna review it right
Yeah,
away.
we're gonna fast track it, and we're like, okay.
Okay.
So someone, and of course there were other interested parties, but honestly, there was a different passion with Wired that they really took it as we also understand it ourselves. So, and this is interesting because when we got invited in at London in Watford, where they are located.
Yeah.
I saw we gave it, they gave a tour in the office, and the first thing I saw is the amount of stuff they have on their games they are doing, and I was like, wow, absolutely all the love is inside those products. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
the best collector's editions there, and I was like, wow, dudes, this is such a cool company, and
They're
yeah,
breeding games, so that was kind of at one look you could already see like, okay, they really care about the games that they're publishing.
yeah,
So you felt very at home right away.
absolutely.
That's
And
that's
that's
a
kind
nice
of how we how we got started. Of course, then we started talking to them, and then kind of together we decided what we wanted to do with Deliver Us the Moon, and they took it to a level that we at one point didn't even imagine.
No, I
So
would
that-
say if there's anything, I'm sure that there's new, like the younger people was like whatever, man. That's the same thing of going like with like the old ways of CDs, but having a box version of your game is
a boy's dream, right?
magical or something. I if I could have imagined that before, of course I could. Like, oh, that would be cool, but they made it a reality. And then, of course, that the kicker is, of course, having that big collector's edition coming up.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, couldn't be.
especially in this digital age, it's like you play the entertainment product and you're like, wow, but to stay a little bit longer and to have something, I think it's quite unique for an indie game to push it that far, and we have to thank Wired for it for pushing it over those limits.
Yeah.
They'll be happy with that. I'll let them know. I'll tell them. I'll give them a tester. So no, it's really good, and it's really interesting to hear that, especially with what you mentioned about the digital space, because I think if I was to make a game, that's what I'd imagine, like an art book or like a box or whatever, and I don't know, for it to just be a digital product. I know exactly what you mean. So that is a good story. I thought you were going to say, oh yeah, they just like emailed us, but no, there was cockroaches, there was Twitter DMs, there was everything. So thank you very much for giving us a huge insight into the story from top to bottom. Really, people will be able to check out more about the game by playing it themselves when you can see the dates that it's coming out on next gen and on Stadia. But can I just hear it from you guys? If you were talking to somebody, you don't need to sound desperate, like you guys have got it sorted. But if you were talking to somebody now who was like, this game sounds quite good, I like 2001: A Space Odyssey and Moon. What could they expect if they boot up Deliver Us the Moon for the first time? What's it like from your words?
I would say it is graphically stunning, and I would say it's actually, you can actually finish this game. I mean, there are so many games that I couldn't finish because, my God, I don't have the time. But this is just very salvageable. It's very wholesome, I think.
Yeah, it's like a very nice escape and an adventure that takes you on a roller coaster of emotions while puzzling your way through environmental hazards. So if you like puzzling, you like adventures, you like an emotional story, and you like being in space on a grounded sci-fi experience, then definitely go for Deliver Us the Moon.
Guys, thank you very much for that. The Deetman's there. Good, that wasn't it?
Love them. Honestly, they are two of the most wonderful people I've ever met. And as you mentioned, they're not wearing their spacesuits, but usually when they do a show, if they were doing any support for the game, they would be dressed in these spacesuits that they had made, like astronauts. Not like the white astronaut suits with the heads. It would be like the ones that they'd wear on the space station.
Oh yeah, like I call them like the slim fit.
Yeah. The funny thing is we were at, the last time I saw them in person was at the last PAX that we ever did, and they wore them every day. And PAX, it's a very hot show, especially when you're surrounded by machines and you're running back and forth doing interviews and stuff. And they're in these blue, really cool looking spacesuits, but obviously they're getting quite hot.
Yeah.
And I were like, show was finished. Do you want to go out, celebrate? Really, really, really good day. We'll have some nice food and a little drink. And Paul's like, I have to go back to the hotel. I'm like, oh, why are you okay? It's like, I have to wash my spacesuit.
Yeah.
Like, they got one each, and it's like, oh,
really
okay,
funny.
I understand.
Yeah. Can you imagine him doing that over like the sink?
So how it went down.
So thank you very much to the Deetmans, and thank you, Aaron, for bringing the goods once again.
My pleasure.
It's a bit of we don't know who's on next week. It might be a special guest. It might just be a pretty news heavy week. We don't know. But what I'd like to ask is, if you've stuck around this long, do give us a little like or a subscribe or a high rating. And like I say, you can email him if you want. It's unplugged@wiredproductions.com. That's unplugged@wiredproductions.com. And we'll see you next week. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to the Deepmans, and thank you, Aaron.
Talk to you soon.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Oh, thanks, Aaron.
Unplugged.